Peace be with you. I am Bruce Wozniak. This is Catholic Sports Radio, located at the intersection of your faith life and sports life, and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all kinds of other podcast platforms. Do be sure to hit that subscribe button so you get every episode delivered automatically every week. Just visit CatholicSportsRadio.net for links to the many places where you can listen and subscribe, and for links to Catholic Sports Radio social media. By the way, I did launch the Facebook group that I tossed around the idea of. I think that was on episode 1. So look for that link too, or just search on Facebook for the group, which right now is called CSR Listeners, but I'm going to count on you folks to give me feedback not only on the show, but even on what maybe the community of listeners should be nicknamed, and then if we should change the name of the Facebook group. For now, put your comments in that Facebook group, your suggestions, your prayer requests, and anything else relevant to this initiative. Hopefully you have listened to episode 1, so you know the mission, you know the purpose of Catholic Sports Radio, and you also know who I am, what qualifies me to do this show. And I encourage you, if you haven't already, to also check out the great guests that were on episodes 2, 3, and 4. Today, I am joined by a Pro Football Hall of Famer who actually just learned that he's going to be inducted into another Hall of Fame that we as Catholics will be particularly interested to hear him talk about. And I'm anxious for him to tell us about a great project he's involved with down in Mexico. And sure, we'll probably even talk some NFL. Welcome to Catholic Sports Radio, Joe DeLamielleure.
Good being here, Bruce.
Great to talk to you, and God bless you. You're just staying at all of this great work in the community. Let's just start, though. We were having some fun off the air before I pressed record, and tell the listeners about that tremendous Catholic family that you came from, the 9th of 10 kids.
Yeah, I'm the 9th of 10 kids. My dad got carried away with family planning. We have 5 boys, 5 girls. So it was just a great childhood. The school I went to was St. Clement. It was right outside Detroit. And my wife and I, we've been married, going to be 47 years now. We walked to school since first grade. So, and she's the oldest of 8. So our families have known each other forever. And they asked her when I got in the Hall of Fame, when did you meet your husband? And she said, when do you meet your brother? She goes, I don't remember.
Wow.
We've just always known each other.
Wow.
So,
that's
and
beautiful.
God bless us. We were in a great school, and I had great role models. I had 4 older brothers. They all played sports, and 5 sisters. And to this day, 4 of them have passed, but because I'm the youngest. But we talk to each other, at least weekly. Our family, and same with my wife's family, and we're actually a blended, we kind of blended into one family, even though my wife, Jerry, and I got married. My brothers are really good friends with her father, and the mother passed away. But so we got all of our her brother, my sisters, we all hung around together as families, which is kind of unusual.
And you were telling me that as kids, you didn't know it because you had a great childhood, but obviously it's a challenge. I don't care who you are, to afford to raise 10 kids, and you were saying that there were certain things that your parents would do so that...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My father went to 3rd grade. My mother went to 8th grade. We lived in a house. When the wind blew real hard, the curtains would move. We had a coal furnace, and it was just... We all thought it was great, the kids. But when we look back at it, we go, how in the heck did Mom and Dad survive that?
And how?
But we had 1 bathroom, no lock, no shower, just a tub, and no washer, no dryer. We took the clothes to the laundromat, and we had a coal furnace. So we'd have to get up and shovel coal into the furnace. And but we didn't even know. I always got a kick out of it because when you went to college and hear these pro football players, man, I lived in this. I had a rough life. I said, I think I didn't have a rough life, but it sounds like I did when I look back at what happened, but we never blinked at all about it. We just enjoyed it, and our parents never made a big deal of it. The biggest deal my mom and dad would always say is, you're going to church. No matter what, you're going to church. And it's just sunk into all the kids. And I go to Mass every day now. I always have.
I was going to ask you, how did they shepherd 10 kids to Mass every week?
We lived 2 blocks from the church.
Ah.
And you walked. And my wife lived 3 blocks from the church, and her family walked. So it was just a really hardcore Catholic neighborhood outside. It's called Centerline, Michigan. It's 1 mile by 1 mile, like a square, surrounded by Detroit.
And tell the listeners what you were telling me off the air about how you took showers as kids, since you just mentioned there wasn't one in the house.
No, we had a tub, just a tub. So my mother heat up water when the kids had to take a bath. We'd put the cold water in, then pour some warm water in. So my mother said, "This is ridiculous. The boys, you go over to the school, which is St. Clement. It's no longer St. Clement, but it's a different school. But she said, you go to St. Clement and you take showers every day. You start playing sports." So that's how we started playing sports. If we had a shower, I don't know if I would be in the NFL. We just, because I follow my brothers, and they taught me. My brothers would never let me on the same team that they were on, so they could pound me, whatever it was, baseball, football, basketball. I was always the youngest one, and they'd always say, "Okay, you're not on our team. We're going to teach you how to play." And they'd be. I said this in my Hall of Fame speech. I got hit harder by my brothers, and Joe Green never thought of hitting me.
Wow!
But that's just how we grew up. It was fun. I loved it, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And actually, my wife and I, when we got married, she's the oldest of 8, and I'm the 9th of 10. We said we wanted 9 kids when we got married. I got married at Michigan State, and what happened is my wife had a child. Like, it took her a year and a half to have a kid. So when I was in Buffalo as a rookie, we had our first child. And then we said, well, we want 9 children because she's one of 8, I'm one of 10. And we said 9 would be nice. Well, she had 2. Then she had a couple miscarriages. Then they gave her like a drug to have a multiple birth. She had twins. And they said, that's it, no more kids. So we had 4 children. The doctor said she can't have any more. And then so we adopted 2 Korean boys. And then, we were just living our life. We just adopted 2 Korean boys. We didn't think anything about how many children we were going to have. Then I started coaching high school football after I retired from the NFL. And we ended up raising 3 other boys. So we actually ended up with 9.
Beautiful.
By accident.
Beautiful.
But it's really strange how life is.
Well, yeah, you say by accident, but obviously you had prayed about it. Yeah, absolutely. You prayed about it, and God honored that and provided to you in His way. And obviously you were able to do it because He never gives us more than we can handle. And between the 2 of you, you managed to raise those 9.
And they've all graduated from school. One's in a trade school, but the rest of them all gone to college, and they're all doing well. Now we have 12 grandchildren, 6 boys, 6 girls. So God has blessed my family beyond belief, and everyone's in good health.
Beautiful.
Knock on wood. And I played 13 years and never had a surgery. So
amazing.
God is good
all the time. I want to back up. You mentioned earlier about going to Mass, and I was impressed, listeners, when Joe and I were in touch setting up this interview. We were going back and forth with some emails, and eventually we got on the telephone. But Joe actually was down here in Florida. He was over in the southeast, and of course I'm in west central Florida in Tampa. And when I emailed him and told him I'm going to call you in a couple hours, he wrote me back and said, well, I'm going to 4:30 Mass. And isn't it great to see that here he is living in North Carolina, he's down in Florida, and he's still putting a priority on going to Mass. And if you did listen to episodes 2, 3, and 4 of Catholic Sports Radio, that seems to be a trend that I'm hearing already from the guests is, I don't care where you go, just because you're away from home doesn't mean that you skip Mass. And Joe, you found a church in Boca Raton last weekend.
And it was a great church, actually. So, and we moved to South Carolina. We now live in Summerville, South Carolina, from Charlotte. And the biggest problem we thought we'd have, it's not finding a house; it's finding a good church to go to. And God's blessed us. We found a really good church, and people are great. And sometimes you don't get the church that appeals to you, and you got to kind of search around, like a shopping doctor. Sometimes there's better parishes for you and your family, what you want. And we found a really great one down here in South Carolina, in Summerville.
Well, listeners, we don't have all the information that we'd like right now, but Joe, just briefly tell the listeners what you do know about what I was mentioning in the intro of this show, that you are going to be inducted into another Hall of Fame. Tell them what I'm referring to.
Well, McClaskey, he's the owner of the Bears. He called and wanted to know if, I'd accept to get into the Catholic Hall of Fame. And me and my college roommate, John Shinsky, who also is Catholic, he went to Cleveland St. Joe's, but he lived in an orphanage till he was like 14 or 15 years old. Then he got into foster care and went to St. Joe's, and ended up being a great football player and got a scholarship to Michigan State. And the coach was Duffy Doherty, who was a Catholic also. And that was the reason I went to Michigan State, because Duffy Doherty's Catholic. I got recruited to Notre Dame, and Parseghian was a coach. My dad said, you can't go there. He's a phony. He's a Protestant coaching at Notre Dame.
Wow.
You go to Michigan State because Duffy's Catholic.
Wow.
I go, yeah, what was I thinking? So, I mean, Catholic, everything has been my whole life. So John was a Catholic, and Coach Doherty put us together because he was in a rough family. He lived in an orphanage. His mother put him in an orphanage when he was 8. He got out when he was 16 to foster care, and he came to Michigan State with a low grade point, like a 650 SAT, something like that. He was on probation, basically, and now he's a PhD. But anyhow, when we were freshmen, he said he's going to build an orphanage. He said, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know where I'm going to, but there will be no nuns. And because he grew up in a Catholic orphanage. Well, guess what? It's a Catholic orphanage, and we have nuns there. So it's kind of funny. But he became a PhD. My other roommate was not Catholic, but we've been friends forever. His name is L.J. Bauer, and he became the director of the Secret Service under Bill Clinton, just in the history, at age 43. So my two roommates, one is a PhD, and one became the director of the Secret Service. And when I got inducted into Pro Football Hall of Fame, I said, I finally caught up with my roommates, but they had real jobs. I just played a game. You don't work football. And I always said that. And people say, oh, you work so hard when I was playing football at Michigan State in high school. And I said, I'd always say to the coach, I don't work hard. I play hard. They don't say, let's go work football. They say, let's go play football. I'm just playing a game that I love. And teachers, firemen, policemen, they have real jobs, nurses. Football players are just playing a game.
Well, and I love the humility there, and isn't that a part of what we as Catholics strive for, is holiness, is humility, and the things that you're exhibiting. We're pretty close to 15 minutes in, and I know there are people scratching their heads saying, when is Joe going to talk about wins and losses? When is Joe going to talk about blocking for O.J. Simpson? And when is Joe going to talk about all his years? And it's wonderful to see that your priority, Joe, I mean, you mentioned, no, you're going to go to the school where there's a Catholic coach. You're not going to go. And you're mentioning the Catholic Church and finding one upon your move and walking to church a couple blocks when you're a kid, and the children that you and your wife have raised. And so, listeners, this is what Catholic Sports Radio is all about. I'd love for Joe to do a little storytelling if he wants, but that's not what Catholic Sports Radio is. We're trying to show you that as Catholics, sports are great. There's so many great qualities to them, but that can't be the be-all, end-all. I do wonder, Joe, how is it for you that you are so honorable in terms of being on the board with the orphanage and these things that you're doing, but I know there are people who do want to come up to you and just talk about Joe the football player, and it sounds like you'd really rather talk about your faith, you'd really rather talk about your family. So how do you strike that balance?
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, I'll talk about football if they want, but once we start talking about football, my wife says, sometimes I think people are disappointed that you're not like all talking about football, rah, 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 the Hall of Fame. She goes, when they find out you're just an ordinary guy, they go, whoa. Because believe me, I'm just a blue-collar guy who grew up in Detroit with lots of brothers and sisters, and no one going to college but me. And the only reason I went to college is because I played football. So I know how valuable it is. And when I had our 4 children, I made enough. We didn't make a lot of money when I was playing. I was the number 1 pick, and my bonus was $30,000, and then my 5-year contract was $22,000, $24,000, $26,000, $28,000. 30.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing guaranteed. One game at a time.
Wow.
And my pension right now from the NFL is $1,247 a month. That's it. But my wife and I, we have 4 children. We adopted 2 Korean boys. We raised 3 other kids that, we weren't supplied by the state money. We just did it ourselves. And some way, somehow, you'll find a way. And we're not rich by any means, but my wife is a pediatric nurse, and we just did what we had to do. And God would come up with time after time when things would go wrong. Some guy conned us. We lost all of our money. I said to my wife, now what are we going to do? And she goes, well, we're going to pray, and we're kangaroos. We can't go backwards. So let's just start looking forward and see what we can do. And God has put so many things into our lives, like getting into the Hall of Fame changed my life because you get opportunities. And, without that, we would have been in trouble financially, but we're okay because we're not rich, but we're rich in different ways.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. And on top of all that, what I want the listeners to hear more about is Joe mentioned that he and John Shinsky are among those that are being inducted into this, what we believe is called Catholic Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Elvis Gerbach is too this year. He's one of the inductees.
Okay.
Elvis played at, I think he played at Notre Dame, Gerbach, or Michigan. He played at Michigan. But he's also getting inducted. And he's got a story about Catholic faith. That's why he's getting in.
And listeners, Joe was mentioning about the orphanage, and we will put up a link on CatholicSportsRadio.net so you can look at the orphanage and learn more about it. But Joe is on the board for that orphanage. And Joe, I'll let you take it from here and tell the listeners about the money that you raise every year for the orphanage, about the bike ride that you did several years ago.
Yeah, when we started, we were trying to figure out how we're going to raise money because we wanted to actually put the orphanage in the United States, but the red tape was so ridiculous. We said, can't do it. So my buddy was flying. He goes around the country, John, and gives lectures on special education. So he met a boy when he was doing a thing in Texas, and he said, look, we have an orphanage that needs a lot of help, and there are rats and everything. The orphanage was terrible. So John went down there, looked at it, and he's always been praying to be able to start an orphanage. That was his goal. And after some businessman in Montemoros, Mexico, said, if you build me an orphanage, we'll give you the land. So John said, well, that's the answer to prayer right there. So that's how it started. And that was about 12 years ago. And then we started to think, how are we going to raise money? So John said, let's get a bicycle ride from Michigan State to Mexico, and we'll ask people to give us a penny a mile.
Okay, stop right there. Let that sink in with the listeners for a minute. Riding a bicycle from Michigan State all the way to Mexico. That was how long of a trip? How many days?
It was 2,000 miles, 18 days, 20 days it took us. And we made it. I never even rode a bike until about 2 months before that. And I went to a girl in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was like one of the top bicyclists in the United States. And I said, can you teach me how to ride a bike? I never rode a bike because we lived in Detroit. We didn't have bikes. And she said, okay, here, get on a bike. She goes, you're never going to make it, bud. She goes, you can't even pedal. I didn't know what to do. After 3 weeks, she goes, oh, my God, I think you're going to make it. She trained me for about 5 weeks.
Okay, that's where I have to ask. Did she know that she was talking to Pro Football Hall of Famer Joe DeLamielleure?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she knew. I told her what we're doing, and she goes, sir, you're not going to be able to do it. That's a long way to go. And she goes, if you're not used to pedaling, your rear end's not going to be able to sit on a bicycle seat that long. I said, whatever I got to do, I'm going to do. So if people go online and they look at Shinsky Orphanage and they look at the ride, it comes across because I tell them that. I said, John, I've never rode a bike, but if I have to run across the border, I'll do it for you, whatever we got to do.
Beautiful.
Those two guys were, John and my other roommate, he came, L.J. Bowering, and, they're experienced bike riders.
Beautiful.
So I just tagged along. And in fact, when we were 3 miles off from the 50-yard line at Michigan State, I asked the guys, how much farther? They said 1,997 miles, you idiot. Let's go. So we had a lot of fun doing that. And what we did is we asked people to donate a penny a mile, and then they were going to put it on TV for the Super Bowl. But Hurricane Katrina hit down in New Orleans.
Right.
So everybody, they said, okay, we can't put it. They have it. When you're watching the thing, they videoed us all the way down there. Then when Katrina hit, they said, no, we can't put it on because there's too much tragedy in the country right now. So you're not going to be on before the Super Bowl. So we were like, oh my God, now what are we going to do? How are we going to raise this money? Well, what happened was they said, we'll put it on before the Final Four. And what good's that going to do? That's basketball. And Dick Enberg was doing his last game, and he didn't want to even do it. He narrated it for us. CBS asked if he'd narrate it. He said, I don't want to narrate up 3 football players riding to Mexico when it's the NCAA. Well, guess what? Michigan State got in the final. They played Butler.
Beautiful.
And that's when it was played, before that game.
There you go.
All Michigan State Nation just about watched that game. They saw the story, and the rest is history. We asked a penny a mile, which is $20 a person because it's 2,000 miles, and we raised over $1 million, and we built the orphanage.
Outstanding.
And that tells a story. It's still there. We got 59 kids in there right now today.
And you have a golf tournament every year that also raises money
in
for
Chicago. Yeah. And that's August 13th. And you go to MPH. That's the National Orphanage for Latin America. And they brought us into their fold because, we were independent. We were just going on our own. So that helps us a lot. But if you go online, you can look at this, and you get all the information. I'm not technical at all. Me and my wife, we just learned how to text about 3 years ago. I'm a functional illiterate when it comes to that.
There's other Pro Football Hall of Famers, I believe, that take part in that annual golf outing to raise money.
Oh, yeah. We got, Rayfield Wright, Elvin Buffet. I can't even name them all. We got like 8 or 9 guys come. And then some guy, a lot of the Bears who played, Doug Plank, Dan Hampton. We got a lot of pretty famous football players in Chicago. And then Hall of Famers come. We get 18 guys, so because there's 18 holes, and then people bid to play with the players they want. So it's been a big success.
Listeners, if you heard episode 2 of Catholic Sports Radio, I mentioned Father Mike Schmitz, and many of you might also be familiar with Father Larry Richards. And if you are, Father Larry always places such an emphasis on giving to the poor. And that's what Joe is doing. Joe's talking the talk, raising money. And Joe, you even told me something off air. Help me remember what it was, where you said that you purchased 4 Super Bowl tickets and then those go to...
Yeah, we do that. Yeah. For our tournament, I buy 4 Super Bowl tickets. From the Buffalo Bills allow me to buy them from them. Then we auction those off. I get my money back because like this year it cost us $9,200 for 4 tickets. So we raffled them off. A couple of years ago, we got $40,000.
Oh my gosh!
For $12,000. Yeah, so it's a big raffle for us.
Fantastic.
And then we give them 4 tickets, 4 Super Bowl tickets, and 4 Taste of the NFL, which is a party with a purpose. There we feed food banks throughout the country, and that's what our tickets go to. And those are the 2 biggest prizes. We got other things you can do. There's other door prizes in that. We had Bob Costas. He was our master of ceremonies last year. So we got a lot of guys who come and they support us, and they know what we're doing down there. And all the money goes, we don't take any of it. We just, I know you hear it. I'm always leery of people raising money, but all the money goes to the orphanage. And we have the orphans. We YouTube them or something. What are they? I'm terrible with technology. Facebook them, is that what it is, or FaceTime? Anyhow, so the orphans see us that night. We put them on a big screen and they talk to the players.
Wonderful.
It's pretty cool. It's at a golf course in Chicago.
Well, and for those of you that are internet savvy, Joe was part of a couple of books. If you want to try to track those down, put a few pennies back into his pocket. There was one called, and I know everybody wants to hear your stories, so go look for a book on Amazon called Tales from the Buffalo Bills Sideline, a collection of the greatest Bills stories ever told. That was by Joe and by Michael Benson. And there's another book out there, Joe D's Tales from the Buffalo Bills. So track those down online. And
you know what I've done? I've since 1983, because I was bored sitting in the meetings, I've kept a daily diary since 1983. I've never published it or anything like that. Everybody says, you should write a book someday. I go, bah, they won't want to color all the pages. What I've done is I wrote my whole life down since 1983. Like I traced, like with our kids, like first dates, dances, weddings, you know, when they were put in a hospital, the kids got sick. So every day I write in the thing, like I wrote in the book today, I got to do this radio program tonight. And I've never missed a day since 1983.
Wow.
So
wow.
Why I did that is I wanted my kids to understand. And like every day I start out, I stretch, went to 8:30 mass or whatever. I always write what I do, because when I'm dead and gone, they do it now. They come and look at all the diaries I wrote. It's like every year I got a diary. Wonderful. And I never miss a day. So the kids know my Korean sons, when they came, I'll never forget the first boy we got was 3 months. We got him off the plane in Charlotte, and they handed him to me, and I'm like, oh my God, God didn't give us 9 months to prepare for this guy, and he's ours now because they gave him to us, and he doesn't even look like us. And so now Andy he's going to be 34 February 26th, and you know, we have these stories, and I got everybody says you should write a book. The book I wrote was just threw it together because I got in Hall of Fame. But I said, you know, I don't know if I'm personal. I like a lot of stuff just for my family, and I don't know if I ever want to write a book or something. I love my kids to know what I did, what we went through.
Absolutely.
And I found this out, that nothing is as good as or as bad as you ever think it is, ever. Like you think something's really bad that happens in your life. We got scammed. We lost everything. And I'm like, man, you're ready to kill yourself. And then God works your way out of it. So that turned out to be a very good thing, because my kids understood, like, oh, man, Dad lost everything he had from football, and they didn't miss a beat. And my wife and I, we always put things, you know, in perspective. Hey, God's got a different plan for us. We're never going to be rich, but we're rich in different ways with its kids and the grandkids.
Amen. And we have hope in Him in every new day. Every new day we have hope in Him.
Yes. You're here I always feel this. They say, why do you go to Mass every day? I joke. I say, that allows me to swear. But it doesn't. I go to Mass every day because I think when you bring Christ into your body, that you're responsible. I feel very responsible that Christ is in me, and I'm not going to embarrass myself or tick Jesus off, basically, talking football terms. I'm responsible for if people see me go to church, they don't want to see some phony outside of church.
That's right.
I devote my life to God and to Christ and my family, and that's why I do it.
Well, Joe, we're out of time, but I do want to ask you one final question, though, because I do wonder, as someone who played all those years in the NFL and the games are always on Sunday, how does an NFL player go to Mass when he has a game on Sunday?
Because they always have a chaplain and they always have a priest. So if you're willing to go, get up at 8:30, 9 o'clock, you know, before the game, you go to Mass. There are more people go to that Mass than any Mass because they're praying to win. But I always say, don't pray to win. Pray that everybody gets out of here healthy, because God isn't picking sides. He don't care if the Bills or the Dolphins win. So what I always prayed for no one to get hurt seriously, and to honor God with our play.
But clarify that. Do you mean that a priest would come to the stadium, or you just got up early and went to your own local church?
No, they come to the hotel.
Okay.
And they have a room on the side. The Protestants go to one room, the Catholics go to the other room. So it's always been like that. Even in college, we did the same thing. Gotcha. We had a priest and a minister, non-denominational minister, who would give a service.
That's beautiful. Joe, thank you so much for your time. God bless you, and thank you for all the work that you're doing in His name and your continued devotion. It's wonderful to hear.
Okay.
Thank you for your witness.
Okay, God bless you and your listeners, too. So thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. Listeners, as we do on every episode, we're going to close with a prayer now, because Joe played in the NFL. He played for the Buffalo Bills and the Cleveland Browns. I chose for this episode one called An Athlete's Prayer. So we'll pray that right now in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I thank you, O God, for giving me a body which is fit and strong, and for making me able to use it well. In my training, help me never to shrink the discipline which I know that I need and that I ought to accept. In my leisure and in my pleasure, help me never to allow myself any indulgence which would make me less fit than I ought to be. When I compete with others, help me, win or lose, to play fair. When I win, keep me from boasting. When I lose, keep me from making excuses. Keep me from being conceited when I succeed, and from being sulky when I fail. And help me always with goodwill congratulate a better man who beat me. Help me so to live that I will always have a healthy body and a healthy mind. This I ask for your love's sake. Amen. Thank you so much for listening. This is Catholic Sports Radio. Find more at catholicsportsradio.net, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It is at Cath Sports Radio on all those, CATH, at Cath Sports Radio. I am Bruce Wozniak, and remember, it's not whether you win or lose, it's that it's Jesus that you always choose.